Hi, my name's Steve. Welcome to the Rock and Metal Invasion. Today's video is called The Blind Buy. It's called The Blind Buy because back in the 80s, early 90s, when I went to the music shop, when I went to the record store looking for some new music, most of the time I would end up buying a record by a band that I had never heard before. So I had not actually heard any music by this band. And you know, for some people these days that might seem a little bit crazy. Like, why would you buy a record when you have not even heard what the record sounds like? Well, the thing is, when you want to listen to hard rock or heavy metal, it's hard to get access to listen to that. It's not played on the radio. I live in New Zealand. Back in the 80s, early 90s, there were a few music shows, but it was pretty limited. So, you just had to go on information that you had rather than things that you have actually heard. Although I'm calling it a blind buy, it's not like I go into the shop, close my eyes, and randomly choose a record. It's more of a deaf buy. I'm deaf. I've not heard the music, but I'm certainly using my eyes. And when I'm looking to buy a record, and this is back in the 80s, early 90s, I'm a young guy. I don't necessarily have a lot of money to go and spend on music, so I have to be. I want to make sure I make a good choice as much as I possibly can. So, I'm going to use certain criteria that I'm looking for when I'm hopefully going to find a good record that I've never heard before. So, the first thing I look for, obviously, if I'm going to a music shop, I look for the hard rock or heavy metal section. So, hopefully, they've got a hard rock or heavy metal section. Because if they've got that section, okay, it's automatically, there could be some good stuff in there. Some music shops didn't, and that didn't mean they didn't have anything I was interested in. It just meant I had to look a little bit harder, perhaps. And also, you didn't necessarily only look in the hard rock or the heavy metal section, because you never know, the people in that music shop may have put things you were interested in not in that particular section, right? They might not know that this band was a hard rock or metal act and have just put it maybe in the pop rock section. So sometimes you needed to look around a little bit more. But so that would be my first go-to place, right? Then the next thing, right? Okay, so I'm in that section. What's a band that or an artist that I might be interested in? And so what I then look for is what the band looks like. And if I found an album like this and they look like that, oh yes, you've got my attention. Okay, now also the band name, Hurricane Ellis. They've spelt hurricane incorrectly. I think they did that on purpose. But that's a good hard rock metal name for a band, and it's called Tear the House Down. Yep. So they're not mucking around. That's a metal title, isn't it? So there's lots here, but really you had me from the cover. Right? Looking at these guys, okay, hair metal kind of the look. It wasn't really called hair metal back in the 80s. It's just like these guys rock, and it's probably going to be Bon Jovi, Motley Crue kind of sound. And then the back cover, take my money. I'm buying it. Songs like Wild, Young and Crazy, Bad to Love, Crank the Heat Up. Yeah. So song titles is another thing I also look at. But yeah, like I say, with an album like this, it's pretty easy buy for me. Okay, because the image is enough for me to be interested. So when I bought this, I'd never heard of it. Never heard of the band, to be honest with you, and hadn't heard the music, but the cover, the song titles, that was enough, and it's pretty good album. Now, you might also get a situation like this, where you see an album like this. This is Steelheart from 1992. Not an easy one to find on vinyl. It's called Tangled in Rains. Now, what's tricky about this one is there's no photo of the band. So if you didn't know, now this is their second album, so if you didn't know, though, that they were hard rock or metal band, hair metal band basically is what they are, if you didn't know that, you might pass this by, right? Because there's no picture of the band. Now, if you open up the insert, which is what I would have done. Oh, yes, okay. Now, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, yep. Great. Although you probably didn't really need to do that. I mean, looking at the song titles, Loaded Mother, Sticky Side Up, Electric Love Child, you know, the song titles kind of give it away. Late for the Party, which is probably what they should have called this album, because they were just a little bit late for the party in 1992 when this came out. Alright, now, then you might come across an album like this. This is Queensryche, of course, classic album, Operation Mindcrime. Now, when this came out, I had heard about it in the magazine, so that's another bit of information that I had when it came to doing a blind buy. Okay, so I'd read about it in the magazines, and it had been getting a lot of positive reviews, so I'm interested, but I'm a little bit concerned when I see this, because you know, the album cover has got no picture of the band. Okay, now this came out in 88. This came out, I hadn't heard any of their previous albums. So I'm really going on the fact that it's been getting good reviews in the magazines. You know, it's in the hard rock and metal section. There's no picture of the band. And, you know, this cover looks a little bit almost like alternative. And then what really freaked me out, it's actually got the running times of the songs. Like, some of the songs are 10 minutes long. You know, when you're into sort of hair metal, hard rock, you're kind of used to those sort of 4-minute party rock kind of songs. 10 minutes is a bit of a concern, potentially. And then there's also songs that are only like 1:22 seconds long. So it's, and then initially this was, when I took it home, it was a bit of a challenge for me. But, yeah, obviously, I thought, spend some more time on it, and yeah, I love it. Some great songs on this. This is a classic album, and yeah, everything they put out actually in the 80s is worth checking out. But like I say, you couldn't necessarily go on my criteria, which is, yeah, it might be in the hard rock heavy metal section, but there's no, I haven't seen the band, the song titles. The song titles, a little bit metal, but not necessarily. Yeah, and there's not a lot of other information on here for me to go on, but using the knowledge I had from magazines, that helped me. And when I brought this, I had not even heard Queensryche before, so yeah, but obviously a great buy. Now, next one I want to talk about now is an artist called Fiona. Now, her album covers are interesting because she definitely deserves to be in the hard rock section. She's the kind of artist that a record store, though, possibly would put in the pop rock section, because this was her album that she put out in 1986, and she kind of looks like Madonna in a way, yeah. And yeah, I mean, I think that's totally okay if you did put it in the pop rock, but you know, some of the other bands that came out that were given the hair metal or hard rock or even metal tag weren't much heavier than this. Produced by Beau Hill, who she was going out with, I think, at the time, or was married to. So again, that would be another criteria or another thing I would look for producers. I got to know producers after a while, and I'd see Beau Hill. Okay, maybe this, you know, this could be like Rat or something like that. Now it's not like Rat, but yeah, it rocks. But yeah, very misleading cover. So I probably well, I don't know if I did, but I may have seen this in the 80s and completely bypassed it, right? In fact, I did not discover Fiona until I saw this album cover. And the only reason it took my interest was not because of her. It's a pretty bizarre album cover, actually, but also because it's got two guys on it, two guys with long hair. So now that's got my attention, right? Because they look a bit like they could be, rock guys. Okay, and then you turn it around, there's more of them again. It's kind of weird because is this like two couples that made a band, but yet it's called Fiona. But awesome album, really good. I mean, it's commercial hard rock. Yes, a little bit, because it's female fronted, female vocals. It's kind of like a bit like what Heart was doing at the time, but maybe a little bit heavier. Yeah. Some great songs, great production. They had, for this album, they brought in some, quality songwriters. So this is the first one I got from Fiona, and I really liked it. It's awesome. From 1992. So then I went back, and now this was the one that came after her 86 album. This came out in 1989, and image-wise, it's better. It's looking a little bit more like a rock album, okay? Especially on the back. She's looking a little bit angry there, so that's much better than that, okay? And it is maybe a little bit heavier. Again, too, a bit of information here that might have given me a clue that this is going to be a rock album. She's doing a duet with Kip Winger. Everything You Do. So that if you had that information, that would give you a little bit of a clue as well. But yeah, hard rock duets that almost never happened in the 80s. So that was kind of an interesting idea. A great song. That's a great song. All right. Now, didn't always work out good for me though. So my blind buys didn't always go so good. Like for example, Kids in the Kitchen. Now, granted, I didn't spend a lot of money on this, but I saw this and I thought, okay. Yep, 1986, I think this came out, something like that. Yep, 1986. Some of these guys, this guy here and this guy here, they've got the sort of hair metal kind of a look. I mean, it's not bad. A lot of guys had the mullet look that still, were in rock bands, hard rock bands. This guy's got the shorty hair, but, he's looking like he's a bit of a rocker. Yeah. Doesn't rock. I can't even remember really what it sounds like, but, and I didn't want to play it even just for this video, because I just remember thinking, okay, that was a waste of $2. But yeah, like I say, at least I didn't spend much money. But you can see here that the cover's a little bit deceptive, I think. A little bit deceptive. This album has a different cover as well, which doesn't look at all like it could be a rock album. So I don't know if this was changed for marketing purposes. It's came out in 86, and like I said, I didn't buy it back in that time. Bought it quite recently. Well, recently as in, sometime over the last sort of 10, 20 years. But when it was cheap. But yeah, thought it was going to rock a bit harder than what it actually does. Another thing I probably should have looked at is that they have a brass section. So there's on the credits, it's got a brass section. If it's got a brass section, usually not something. Well, not really. Usually not something I'm going to be interested in. Okay, another album that tricked me a little bit, and this tricked me back in the day. So this is me going into the music shop in 1988 or something like that, whenever it was, and actually walking out some money, thinking this guy is going to be like Bon Jovi, because he looked like Bon Jovi, and this is Danny Wild. Now, this is not the album I brought. It's the one after this, which thankfully I've managed to get rid of. But I've still got this one. It's called The Boyfriend. Don't ask me why, after buying his follow-up album, I then ended up with this one as well, because maybe I thought this one might rock a bit harder. But, to be honest with you, it's kind of like John Cougar Mellencamp kind of stuff. I mean, it's okay, I suppose, but it's not what I'm looking for. But yeah, what tricked me with and I could have got tricked with this one as well. He's on a motorbike, he's got longer sort of hair there. But yeah, the follow-up album, yeah, he looks a little bit like John Bon Jovi, and yeah, so I just thought, oh yeah, this would be a rock album, and it is, I suppose. But I'm looking for more of a rock with a bit more of a metal edge to it. So yeah, not always. The blind buys didn't always work, but usually I did pretty well. So this is another one that could have been bad. This is Donnie Miller. Okay, so the solo artist makes it a little bit tricky because you don't have a whole band to kind of go on. It's just one guy, and it could just be that this one guy just happens to have long hair, but the music doesn't necessarily rock. And a lot of the solo artists weren't necessarily, the hard rock kind of guys. But in this case, it does fit the sort of hair metal hard rock category. That's the back cover. And produced by Lance Quinn, who did some work with Bon Jovi. So that's a bit of a clue. So, looking at the credits, producers was another bit of information that I used when making a purchase. All right, I'm going to stop it at that. But that's just a bit of information about how I went about doing blind buys back in the day, and even now still use that information when I go to a music shop, because I'm still finding things that I've never heard, and then I have to think to myself, is this something I'm going to be potentially interested in? So look at the song titles, look at the producers, look at what the band look like, look at maybe the record label that it comes out on, and if it all matches up pretty good, then add it to the collection. Alright, hope you enjoyed the show. Later.